So how the heck do you go about attracting your first 1,000 true fans? In this episode, I'm going to share 5 content strategies that will ensure that you're attracting the right kind of buyer to your social media, to your blog, to your podcast, to your email list. And I'm also going through 5 mistakes that you want to steer clear from as you come up with your own strategy. So this 1,000 true fans concept is not my original. If you're familiar with Kevin Kelly's work, he actually wrote an amazing essay back in 2018, all about why businesses could totally flourish if they just attracted 1,000 true fans. Now, this concept has gone viral all over the internet. It's actually published in multiple books, including Tim Ferriss's Tool of Titans, which you should totally check out. But I absolutely love this philosophy, and I thought it was really interesting how Kevin Kelly describes it. So he says the following: a true fan is defined as a fan that will buy anything you produced. And he goes on to say, these die-hard fans will drive 200 miles to see you sing. They will buy the hardback and paperback and Audible versions of your book. They'll purchase your next figurine sight unseen. They will pay for the best of DVD version of your free YouTube channel. They'll come to your chef's table once a month. If you have roughly 1,000 true fans like this, also known as super fans, you can make a living if you're content to make a living, but not a fortune. And I love that he's actually nuancing this, right? He's giving us a clear picture of, hey, you can thrive, you can have an amazing fan base, and you can have a sustainable business that makes you 6 figures, if not more than that. But this is not necessarily for everyone, right? If you're in a skill stage, if you're in a breakthrough stage, if you're in a profit stage, you've probably most likely already attracted 1,000 true fans, and then you're ready to level up. But for so many of us who are just getting started, this concept, this philosophy is intrinsic. It's so incredibly important. It's essential. And so as you go about this training, I want you to start thinking about, do you have 1,000 true fans in your business? Can you forecast having 1,000 true fans? What would that mean for your company? What would it mean for your brand? What would it mean for being able to have a consistent stream of customers who absolutely love everything that you have to share? So he continues to kind of talk more about this concept in his essay. So if you want to check that out, definitely do so. I will link to it in the description box below. Now, one of his graphs in this essay I absolutely loved. He talks about the power of 1,000 true fans, right? And so he shows you how these mega artists can sell fewer products to a ton of people, and that's how they scale and level up. Whereas artists with 1,000 true fans, they can actually sell a ton of products to a few amount of people. In other words, they're leveraging the quality versus quantity mentality, right? That concept that we've talked about at length here on this channel as well as on the podcast. And I love this because it's so important, especially if you're getting started. Think about, what you could do with selling so many more products to fewer people versus selling a few products to a ton of people. And of course, he nuances this and he talks about how this applies to enterprise companies and, people who are in different industries and different niches. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an artist, right? This applies to content creators and e-commerce products and service providers. But I love just being able to kind of explain and walk through that concept with you, because popularity usually means that you're appealing to less people. You're going broader with your message, which means fewer of your products will actually appeal to the masses unless you've gotten to a tipping point, right? Like your Apple or your Google or these mega companies like Tesla, where your product appeals to the majority of consumers. But that requires such intense amount of capital, such intense amount of resources, a huge vision, a massive company. You might even have to go IPO. And so in these stages, when we're talking about solopreneurs, it doesn't really apply to us as much, right? So I just want you to start leveraging this mentality of popularity isn't always the best thing, right? You gotta attract your first 1,000 true fans, because all these mega companies, even if you have a huge vision, even if you have huge dreams and you're like, Kim, I want to go big, right? I want to expand. That's perfectly fine. It just means that you got to do the steps. You really just have to do the steps in order, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm going to go mainstream without knowing who your people are. And so if that's your big dream, if that's your goal, or if it's not, even if you just want to, make a living, replace your full-time income, you start here with 1,000 true fans. You don't skip the steps, which is so critical and so important. Now, of course, that brings me to tip number one, strategy number one, which is to go through and really focus on profitability versus popularity. I think this is so important and so key, especially as we kind of start off a new season in our businesses. When it comes down to it, leveraging profitability, focusing on monetization, thinking of your entire content strategy, the people that you're going to attract on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever it is that you're active, let's start having that mindset of profitability. Let's focus on making products that are ideal for our first 1,000 true fans, that really put them at the forefront, that give them value, that help bring them up, that lift them up, instead of constantly thinking about, oh, I need to hustle, right? Because I got to get my Instagram game up, or, I got to get, my first 100,000 YouTube subscribers, or I'm just going to obsess, right? I'm going to obsess on anything and everything that I need to do in order to reach, X amount of Twitter followers. And so we get stuck in this paralysis mentality of having to be uber popular instead of being uber effective, instead of being, uber service focused or service centric. And we lose sight of it because there's so many shiny objects, especially when it comes to online marketing. And it's so easy to get sidetracked. I hear from you guys all the time. And sometimes I'm just shocked. I got a DM the other day, and one of our followers is like, Kim, I'm spending 4 hours on Instagram, replying to DMs, commenting on other people's content. And I'm like, honey, you have a part-time Instagram hobby, not a business. We got to get you back on monetization, on focusing on, being profitable versus being popular. And of course, those things are important. Of course, we want a bigger audience. Of course, we want to leverage any specific growth strategy that's going to help us get there faster. And we're going to talk about that later in this video, but we don't want to compromise, right, what we're here to do. We don't want to overlook the marketing part of content marketing. And it's just so easy to lose sight of this, right? So we want to look at what we're doing. We're creating content to promote our business, to promote our brands, not just for the sake of it. And I think that's where a lot of us get confused and get lost. So as we kind of go into mistake number one, I want you to start doing a little bit of an audit. Start thinking about, are you obsessing over growth hacks? And is that something that you need to be obsessing about in this season? Truly, before you obsess about any growth hack, I want you to start obsessing before you do that about your customers. Start really obsessing about their success, about what is it that they need from your brand? What problems can you solve as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as a service provider? Whatever you do, however you define yourself, in this career space of the online world, I want you to get obsessed with the people that you serve first and foremost. That is how you achieve long-term success. And it's so interesting because we think about all of these mega successful super companies, if you will, all these huge tech companies in this space. And Tesla comes to mind, for example, and we look at their product line and it's very, very specific. They clearly know who their ideal audience is, and they only create products for that person, right? So if you're a tech geek and you totally value technology, it's almost like you have to have a Tesla. Like if maybe you're a creator on YouTube and you have like a huge audience, or maybe you're an influencer in the space, or maybe you are a startup founder in tech. I know in Austin here, like we see Teslas everywhere. It's almost like a badge of honor. And if you meet a Tesla fan, I mean, they're hardcore about their cars. They're the first in line whenever a new model comes out. They will happily pay 2 to 3 times more than an average car just to be able to have the experience. And so that's where I want you to focus your attention, is how can you put your customers at the forefront of what you do? And that starts with content creation. Truly it does, right? You don't just miraculously attract those people. You got to get really specific on who they are, and content is an amazing vehicle to get there. So as we continue along, I really want you to start addressing that. Is that where you want to be? And how can you layer a lot more of that content that is user-centric, right? Ideal audience-centric versus the opposite of just trying to hack your way through growth. Now, as we continue on, I want you to really take this next step to heart, and that's start messy and push through the pressure. Start messy and push through the pressure. What does that mean? I think that when we're just getting started, whether it's with social media marketing or just marketing in general, or transitioning from a real business, and I say real business with air quotes, real online businesses are real businesses too, but a business in the traditional business space into an online business, it can feel really, really, really intimidating, especially because you're maybe the kid that's new on the block and there's so many competitors. Instead of looking at your competitors at the local level, right? Like who is selling, maybe these awesome clothing items at a boutique, or who's selling plumbing services. And now all of a sudden you're comparing yourself to every boutique in the face of the planet, because through the internet, we're all connected. Now you're comparing yourself to the best of the best, not just in your community, in your city, in your state, in your country, but in the world. And it can become really, really overwhelming. One of the key things that I want you to start doing is committing to starting messy and realizing that you have to take the pressure off. You just have to take the pressure off if you're going to stay consistent, if you're going to push through what it takes to be committed. You got to just let it be what it is and not worry about the fact that maybe you only have 500 followers, whereas, maybe Jimmy Doe, who started 5 years before you, has 200,000. Don't compare yourself to other people. Their journey is unique and totally different than yours. And I feel like in this world where, again, we're comparing ourselves to everybody on the planet, it can be consuming and it can really paralyze and stunt your success. So instead, I want you to think about what it would feel like to have 200 and 500 people in one room, literally there to listen to what you have to say. That changes the perspective completely. Can you imagine all the work that you would have to do to get 500 people in a room so that you can talk to them every single day? That would be crazy. And that's really the equivalent of what we are experiencing on social media. So instead of putting so much pressure on yourself to just constantly outperform and outgrow every single human that is in your space, do you come up with your own plan? I had the same experience. I had even more pressure because as a social media manager, I wasn't just comparing myself when I started to the social media managers in my town or in my city or in my state. It was like, no, it's all the social media managers of all time, everywhere, plus all the marketing influencers, that were teaching social media managers new tricks and hacks and tips. So it was extremely overwhelming, but I had to get comfortable. I had to push through. I had to get real comfortable with committing and starting messy and not worrying about having to have everything perfect, just doing what I needed to do, which was to show up as a professional and show up consistently with valuable content. I'm telling you, it's been a thing my entire career, and there's been so many people that are like, oh, Kim, like, I wish you had more followers and maybe you should have more subscribers. And I'm like, you know what? It'll happen. Like, yeah, I want more subscribers and more followers, but I can also confidently compare my bank account with people who have 5, 10, 20 times more followers than I do, because I leverage the principle that I'm talking to you about today. And that is to have your first 1,000 true fans. Really leverage the mentality of profitability versus popularity and push through the pressure of feeling like it's embarrassing because you have, 3 people who are liking your post and 2 of them are your mom and dad. I get it. I've been through that. It sucks, especially when what you do is content marketing. It's like, oh my gosh, my whole entire thing is a portfolio to the world. So you got to push through the pressure. You can't stay stagnant. You can't let it cripple you. You're better than that. And there's people who are counting on you. And I think that when we're focused on our why, when we really understand why we're doing what we're doing, everything shifts, everything changes, and we can get so much more in focus and on mission. And that empowers us to move forward. Now, as we continue here with our presentation, I wanted to share with you the mistake that I see so often when it comes to posting. And this is so important. Mistake number 2, posting whenever you feel like it. Not consistently, not when you know that you should, but when you feel like it. And so there's a really interesting balance here between pushing through and starting messy and staying consistent and being a professional and showing up and committing. I had a full-time job when I started my business. I had clients on the side. I hustled 60 hours a week in my full-time job, and Saturday nights I was working on my blog. Sunday mornings I was posting on Instagram. I was learning. I was leveling up my skill set. I was committed to making this happen no matter how long it took. I was going to show up. And of course, I wasn't perfect. There were many weeks where I did not put a YouTube video up, or I didn't write a blog post, or I didn't send a newsletter. But for the most part, I did what I could, what was within my my means. And I think that so many people get sidetracked, kind of in this comfort zone of, I kind of am committed, but kind of not, and I'm just going to post when I have time. And it's like, no, you got to push, right? Like, just because I'm telling you to start messy and I'm telling you that you should push through the discomfort doesn't mean that now you get to just, hang back and just relax. No. You're building your dream. You're building your business. And if you're committed to whatever lifestyle you want to live, whatever, amount of revenue you want to produce, you got to stay on the money. You got to stay focused no matter what. And this takes discipline and it takes practice. You got to build on that muscle of consistency, right? You don't just go to the gym and then 2 hours later, you got this like amazing 6-pack. It doesn't, I wish it did, but it doesn't work like that. You got to go and you got to work out and you got to watch your diet, right? And you got to get your supplements in line, and you got to make sure that you're waking up before everyone else if that's what's required for you to go to the gym. If that's important to you, if your physique is important to you, if your health is important to you, you got to commit to get the results. Otherwise, you're just going to be falling into this trap of never-ending excuses that keep you stuck. So commit. Don't follow your feelings. Don't follow your emotions. Make sure that you're posting consistently. And it's okay. It's okay if life gets in the way. It's okay if now and again, you miss a post here or there or an episode here or there, but do your best to stay committed. This is your dream. It's your future. And there is no space for excuses when it comes to really looking at your legacy. It's about helping other people. It's about, lifting up your family. It's about funding whatever mission that you have. And you got to take that seriously if you're going to attract your first 1,000 true fans, especially on social media when everything's changing so fast and there's so many voices, right, that are competing for people's attention. You got to stay on it for sure. Now, one of the things that I wanted you to think about as we're transitioning here into the next tip number 3, is to get clear on your who and your what. AKA you gotta know what your value proposition is. So if you've never heard this term value proposition, I promise it's a lot simpler than what it sounds like. And really, it's just getting clear on who you are serving and what you are delivering for that person. When you have answers to those both questions, you really can outline who your ideal client is. And this isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to be something that you're just going to wake up and you're going to be like, I know who my ideal client is. I love one of the quotes that Marie Forleo says consistently, and that's clarity comes from engagement, not from thought. In other words, you're not going to get clear on who your people are and what it is that you're going to offer as a solution until you actually start engaging with those people. And social media is the ideal place to do that, right? Having conversations with your people, having those DMs that we talked about in the beginning, just not spending all day doing that. Having conversations with your ideal clients will show you who truly is an ideal client and who really isn't. In my first year of business, I worked with over 50 different clients in all different types of industries, from like roofing companies. I had heart doctors, heart surgeons, I had ophthalmologists, I had plastic surgeons, I had a gym, I had galleries, I worked with fitness instructors, I did everything and anything. If you were asking me to do social media, I was going to do social media for you. And that was super intentional. I wanted to figure out who I wanted to work with. And I had a chance to do that in corporate America and decided, you know what? I love working with small business owners. It's awesome. It's awesome to manage multi-million-dollar campaigns and have a full stack of amazing teammates and, you know, people that I could outsource creative and design and video. But I really had a heart for small business owners. I wanted to show them how they could compete with larger corporations and still win with way smaller teams and way smaller budgets. And I loved working with those people. But if I wouldn't have actually tried to work with different kinds of clients, it would have been basically impossible for me to determine who it was that I wanted to work with, who was my ideal client, who was one of those 1,000 true fans that I really loved to serve. And so as you kind of go through the process of creating content, as you have this at the forefront of your business, of finding your 1,000 true fans, I really want you to keep this in mind. Know who you serve and what you offer, right? It's very simple, but oftentimes common sense isn't really common practice. And I can't tell you how many times I will interact with entrepreneurs who don't really know who their ideal client is. And that's part of growing. It's part of leveling up. It's part of getting clarity and falling in love with the people that you serve. Otherwise, it's going to be an uphill battle to attract more of the ideal people that you're trying to serve. And also it's going to be an uphill battle to continue to serve them long term and build a business that, again, leverages the strategy, right, of selling more products more often to less people, right? Ideally, the same people, which is the whole concept in this lesson. So I really want you to start thinking of this as you continue kind of having this in the back of your head and auditing your entire strategy when it comes to content creation specifically. Now, when it comes to the next mistake that I often see so many content creators kind of going through and experiencing, and it kind of ties into what we just talked about, right? So it's creating selfish content. I have to give a shout out to Sean Cannell. I watched one of his videos recently where he was talking about creating selfish content and how common this really is. And I have to agree. I mean, I've even fallen into that trap many times in my career, and that's creating selfish content. It's content that you want to talk about. It's content that you care about, not content that's powered by search, not content that's proven by different apps and tools, which if you want to learn more about that, we will link a related episode that we just released recently that'll help you find proven content ideas for social media, your blog, your videos, your podcasts, etc. But really, it's that attitude of creating selfish content. And oftentimes, right, I will get a question from a member, one of our students, or even someone in the community who's like, Kim, I have tried everything. I've tried to reach 1,000 fans and followers on Instagram, or I've tried to add 1,000 people to my email list, or I've tried this concept of attracting 1,000 true fans, aka 1,000 buyers in your community, and I just failed epically. So I'll ask them for a link to, their Instagram account or their Facebook or whatever it is they're using. And it's really interesting because it's just all random content. It's all like, I decided to vlog one morning on my jog and talk about fashion. And then another day I decided that I wanted to talk about business. And then the next day I actually wanted to talk to therapists who work in the same industry as I do. And so it's just this discombobulated mess of different topics that don't appeal to any particular person, or worse, they're supposed to appeal to one person, but you haven't done any research. You haven't actually asked them what they care about. You haven't looked and leveraged multiple amazing tools like we've talked about to find topics that people are already searching for, topics that people already care about, right? You haven't surveyed your audience. You haven't put up polls. You haven't asked. And when you don't ask, you miss out on the opportunity. When you don't ask, you start interjecting your own, thoughts and your own desires and your own interest, and you start projecting that onto other people. And other people are like, you know what? There's this other YouTube channel that I like better, or there's this other podcast that is like, they understand me. They get who I am. Every episode is just like fire. And then you miss out on having people who actually are loyal, followers or loyal subscribers or loyal readers. You miss out on that connection. And so instead of creating selfish content, I want you to create content that's value centric. Okay. I want you to create content that people actually cannot wait to open their freaking inbox to read. Content that really hits them hard in the heart section, that really helps you connect with them, not just on a relationship that's transactional, that kind of level, but on a heart level. So I really want to challenge you to start thinking about that as you go about creating your strategy and auditing it, right? Are you making these mistakes? How can you avoid them? Super important, super key. Don't say that I did not warn you. All right. So as we continue along, I wanted to actually quote this great piece of wisdom from Brian Clark at Copyblogger. He says, audience first is really the idea that you build that group of people by providing them value. Duh, right? So important. Audience first content, people. Audience first content. That's where it's at. You cannot and should not try to build a business just by sharing your own interest. And this even applies in a niche or in an industry where you are. Like if you are an influencer and your entire job revolves around documenting your life, even then, even if you're just doing vlogs, it totally depends on what your audience wants to see. Like, do they really want to see you? Skating, at the local skating ring or rink, or they actually want you to show them more of your day-to-day life? Listen to the feedback. You got to be paying attention to what type of content resonates. And that even goes as far as format, especially if you're that kind of person who you are sharing your interest with your audience. You are just looking at, ways that you can share your life with them. There's certain elements of your life, there's certain, kind of formats that'll interest them more. And so you got to pay attention to all this stuff. Audience first content. Do not forget it. Let's totally skip out on selfish content and focus on our people first and foremost. That, my friend, is a winning strategy for sure. Okay, so as we continue on to tip number 4, I want to remind you that you should be emulating before you try to innovate. Emulate before you innovate. What does that mean? It means that you should find other brands who are already crushing it with their strategy in your industry and outside of your industry. And I'm not saying you should steal their ideas, okay? Very clear distinction here. We've talked about this many times. Tony Robbins always says that success leaves clues, right? I for sure would not attempt to do something for the first time on my own if I know that the stakes were as high as, hey, this is my future, without having or studying what other people have done before me. There is no reason why you should try to innovate, off the gate. You want to emulate before you innovate. Ensure there's a place and a time and a season for innovation. There's a place and a time and a season for thinking outside the box and thinking bigger and spreading your message. But I really want to make sure that you have your foundation covered. And I see this way too often, especially when it comes to brand new entrepreneurs who are getting started with this whole concept of attracting 1,000 true fans. So what does this mean? How does this translate into content creation? It's actually pretty simple, and I'm going to give you some practical steps. Number one, the first thing I want you to do is to go in and make a list of 5 brand models. I talk about this in the Business Lounge at length when I am sharing with my students how to validate their idea and how to launch their business into the world. One of the first things that we talk about is creating brand models. And this is a concept that you can apply not just to business models, right? You can look for people who have interesting business models that you want to emulate, but also in content creation. I think it applies even more in content creation. So what you should do, instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to try this whole podcast thing with a twist where I'm actually live in my car as I drive home, take a look at what other people are doing with podcasting that are crushing it, right? Look at the top 5 podcasts, and then take a look at the top 5 in your niche and then outside of your niche and get an idea, right? Study what's already working. Again, success leaves clues, and you want to study those clues. You want to have a clear strategy to deploy, and maybe you take, a couple strategies from one podcast and you're like, you know what? I love that, they're creating the same type of format every single week. I'm gonna actually steal that, or I'm gonna model that. And then I actually really like that this person is actually really transparent with their life. They kind of just, it's borderline TMI. And maybe I'm not gonna do all of that, but I would like to try that. And maybe, I like that this person is, I don't know, maybe on their podcast, they bring a ton of interviews and their guests are pretty controversial. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to bring that type of kind of vibe, but to my audience. So maybe you are kind of like the female Joe Rogan and you decide, hey, I'm going to actually bring this kind of controversial ideas or this idea of like exploring topics from all different kinds of worlds and putting that into more of like the female entrepreneurial type of audience. So you gotta look at what's working for, different brand models and then come up with a strategy that works for you. Take ideas, don't be afraid of modeling. Don't steal. Please don't steal. That is not what I'm talking about. But you do want to model and you want to find what works for you and you want to test and you want to experiment and you want to figure out, okay, how can I make this my own? How can I put a twist on this? How can I really make it something unique and special and different? That's what we're talking about. Instead of just trying to put out this like brand new innovative podcasting, format where like maybe you're like filming the podcast while you're taking a shower and you're also sort of going live from, the neck up, which is super weird. Don't do that. It's just an example. Don't do that. Like there's no need to do that. You can totally leverage what other people are doing and what they're doing smartly to implement into your own business, into your own content strategy. No. There's no need. There's no need to innovate when you can emulate, especially as you're starting, kind of new season in your business and you're, maybe just dipping your toe in the water for the first time. So here's what I just talked about. Please don't make this mistake. Throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. There is no reason to experiment and try things. I definitely think that's important. But when you're first getting started, especially when you're brand new to social media or when you're brand new in general to the business world, let's actually work on modeling what is actually already working. And I can't tell you, I've been in business for over 9 years now, and I still to this day, when I'm launching something new, I totally try to model what's already working, because I've made the mistake in the past to try to innovate before I was ready to. And it just totally and epically backfired. It was a total waste of time and energy and money and team resources, and it was unnecessary. So instead of just trying to figure out what content you're going to be creating and just, throwing out there everything and anything, get a good strategy. We have a million episodes on how to do that. And we will link a playlist in the description of this episode for you so that you can go and binge all the content strategy content that we have. But in the meantime, I want you to actually find proven content. Find content that already does well, right? Emulate what's working. Look for what people are searching for. You can open up YouTube and type a couple keywords. What are the videos that are doing well in my industry? And then what's actually working on Pinterest, another great search engine? What are people writing about on Google, right? Look at trends and look at search. People are going to tell you what they want. It's really that simple. And so few people actually leverage the power of proven content, even if it's just proven ideas, right? Like proven topics, proven like little spins on existing content. You can do all those things, but very few people do it. So I hope that you start leveraging this. It's a huge mistake and it's totally unnecessary. It'll stunt your progress, it'll stunt your success, and it'll inevitably leave you burned out and frustrated. I don't want that for you. So let's please emulate, research, find proven content. There's no need to struggle. There really isn't. So the next tip and my final tip is this one: shorten your learning curve. Shorten your learning curve. I bet a lot of you are making the fifth mistake, which is only piecing together free advice and getting stuck in perpetual learning syndrome. I've been there. I know what that's like, but listen, you have no reason to stay stuck. You gotta level up your learning. You gotta level up your skill set, right? Grab a book on content marketing, grab a book on business, grab a book on traditional marketing. Anything and everything that you can get your hands on to learn and level up your skill set, do it. There is a reason why, people put 20, 30 years of their experience into their books, into their podcasts, into their paid courses, into coaching, into masterminds. You can literally skip ahead and shorten your learning curve by years, if not decades, if you're methodical and strategic about learning. And I don't want you to get stuck in this perpetual, cycle of just learning and not implementing. Of course, I want you to be strategic with what you learn, who you learn from, and what format works best for you. But I don't want you to, do the opposite or stay on one end of the spectrum and then just try to piece free advice. That is not always the best strategy. There's tons that you can learn for free. I mean, you're listening to this episode for free. I'm all about free content. Trust me, it's what I teach. But there is a ceiling to what you can learn for free. Not to mention, it's going to take you a ridiculous amount of time to piece together all these different concepts and these different principles when someone can actually walk you step by step through their proven process that they have figured out after years and years of failures. If you can do that, why not? I mean, a book is like $15, $20 if that. You can, rent a book at the local library, or you can swap it with a friend, or you can read the Kindle version or download the audiobook. There's so many things that you can do. There's really no excuses. So whenever you have the opportunity of really learning in a specific strategic season, do it. If you can afford to buy a course, do it. It'll totally accelerate your progress. If you can afford to be a part of a mastermind, or if you have the accessibility of hiring a coach for $10,000 a month, do that. Seriously, the earlier you can start with leveling up your skill set, the faster you will go and you will reach those milestones so much quicker. I am I am literal proof of this. I cannot tell you, when I started my business, I was very short on funds. Okay. I had crazy student debt. I barely was making rent. It was crazy. I literally had a laptop that I borrowed from my dad, which he got as a handout from the university that he works in, and it had a bunch of missing keys. I was literally like typing super hard on the keyboard on the keyboard in order to get, K done and like L, and it was like total pain. So I used that laptop for like a year. The minute that I was able to afford my first $100 course, that seemed like so much money at the time. It was like, oh my gosh, I could never spend that much money. But it changed my business. I was able to stack on knowledge, and I started reading and listening to podcasts and really being methodical and strategic with learning. And it leveled up my mindset. It allowed me to build on top of my God-given skills. And you really can accelerate your progress dramatically. It's the reason why before I turned 30, I had built 2 multi-million-dollar businesses. Okay. You don't get to that point without hyper learning, but being strategic with who you learn from and finding a format that works for you. So this part is so important. I know that I might sound biased because I sell online programs, but I'm not telling you to buy my online programs. I'm telling you that if you want to get to the next level, you have to look at what's already working for other people. There is literal wisdom in so many books. There's 20, 30 years, multiple decades of wisdom. And things like books and things like mentorship and things like coaching and things like mastermind groups. It's why my husband and I literally make it a point to go through a boot camp or coaching or masterminds every quarter. And then in the meantime, we're reading like crazy. Like he has a book club, startup books. It's amazing. It's literally designed for entrepreneurs to stay accountable with reading, but then also implement with our learning. So totally going to give him a shout out here on the show because it's a really great product. But we're taking courses, we're reading, we're learning, we're talking to our friends. Just think about how much you could go ahead in life, ahead in your business, ahead in your career, if you just embrace this idea of mastery. If you embrace the idea of, okay, I'm going to get really strategic with what I'm going to learn, and I'm going to make time every single week to learn either something new or I'm going to hone in on my skill set. Okay. It's super key. It's super important, and something that I just don't see enough people doing, especially. And here's the other thing. How many times have you bought a course, a book, a training, maybe even purchased a mastermind and didn't attend? You just left the course sitting there and didn't actually take action. You just, have books that are just sitting there in your closet. Dust them off. Put them to good use. It's not just about committing to purchasing the thing. It's about going through it. It's about committing to actually learning, about, sharpening your skill set, right? That saying about, if I had, what is it, a day or 2 days to cut down a tree, I would spend the majority of time, I don't know how long, maybe a day, sharpening the axe, right? That's what you want to do. You want to sharpen the axe before you take a swing at your business, at building and attracting those first 1,000 true fans. You got to sharpen your skill set. You can't come out and just be like, posting random stuff on Instagram like it's Twitter. No, you can't be posting 5 times a day on Instagram without a strategy. You got to know what's actually working, right? You're on Reels. You are leveraging stories. You're looking at IGTV. You're paying attention to what's working, and you're getting ideas and insights from influencers and people who have done marketing for a long time and can teach you a thing or two. Same thing applies with your business, right? Maybe you're thinking about doing accounting and bookkeeping for your brand yourself, but you have no idea how to do that. You don't just start messing with the software. No, you take a course, or you actually hire a CPA to give you a training, or, at the very least, I don't know how this would work, but maybe you read a book. Whatever it is, do your research. Come at your business prepared. There is no need to come totally unprepared, especially in this day and age where we have just a ridiculous amount of resources at our fingertips. So make use of that. There's really no need to piece together information, because when you do that, honestly, and look, again, prefacing this with the fact that I love love free content, but there gets to a point where now free content that you are receiving from one person versus the other is conflicting and confusing, and it'll only cover the surface level. Like seriously, most content creators, most content creators, at least the ones that I know who are actually crushing it, they'll share with you for free maybe A, B, and C. But D through Z, that's what you're learning in their paid products. They're teaching you the surface level strategies that are still valuable and helpful, but there's no way that they have enough time or energy, nor should they actually share all this deep knowledge with you that they've spent decades refining and perfecting, and probably a lot of money. At least in my case, it's been like hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just in mistakes, but in actual training and an education to get to the point where I can innovate in my own business and I can teach you something new. So all those things are super important, right? Like you want to make sure that you understand that what you're consuming is the surface strategies, the deep work, the strategies that are actually super important for you to execute, the mindset, all of that is in paid courses, it's in paid memberships, it's in boot camps and masterminds. There's just not enough time, even in an hour-long podcast like this one, to actually go into all the intricacies. So I hope that you're thinking about that. And as we wrap up, I will leave you with one final thought. What you're doing in the world, it really matters. There's people out there, there's at least 1,000 true fans out there who need your products, your services, who need your programs, and most of all, they need you and your message. This is as much about impact as it is about freedom. And I want to make sure that you are committed to those future 1,000 people who are out there in the world waiting to find you. And you're preparing, right, to meet them with incredible enthusiasm, with crazy commitment to put their needs and their challenges first. And that starts today. It doesn't start, in a week from now or in a month from now, or maybe next year when things kind of start looking up for you. No, it starts today. It's your responsibility to reach those people and empower them with whatever solution it is that you offer. And I am counting on you just as much as they are. And we will be here at every step to root for you along the way. So I hope that you found this episode helpful. I can talk about content strategies all day long, but I want you to listen to our other episodes, which will link in the description, of course, especially when it comes to creating an amazing content marketing strategy. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next episode. Un beso. Bye for now.